Hello, everyone who is joining us today. I'm just going to give us a few minutes to let more people join, and then we will get started with today's conversation. Okay, it looks like we have people joining. So I think now is a good time to start. So, hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few different housekeeping items for Zoom. So as this is a Zoom webinar, all attendees will be automatically muted and off camera throughout the session. So if you have any questions during the discussion, please submit them in the chat or in the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to address them at the end of the session if time permits. So today's webinar is titled When the World Arrives, Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention During Major Events. So as the 2026 FIFA World Cup kicks off today and captures the world's attention through July 19th, it's a timely moment to discuss how communities can work together to protect children and prevent exploitation in the context of major global events. This webinar is hosted by PACT and the Rothko Chapel in collaboration with the Children's Assessment Center in Houston. Today, we will explore how large-scale international events can impact cities like Houston and why awareness and prevention efforts matter as visitor traffic increases. Moderated by the Rothko Chapel, the conversation will cover common warning signs of human trafficking, community safety considerations, vulnerabilities that can emerge during high traffic events, and practical ways that residents, organizations, and visitors can help reduce the risk and support prevention efforts. So I would like to introduce our moderator for today's conversation. Abdullah Antepli is the president of the Rothko Chapel in Houston, Texas. We're honored to have him here today to moderate this very important discussion. And with that, I will turn it over to Abdullah.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, or what time zone you are all in. I hope I'm inviting you virtually to the magical and sacred space of Rothko Chapel, but I hope you will honor that invitation and come in person and visit us as much as possible. It is a delight and pleasure to moderate this session and host it virtually through Rothko Chapel because this issue is incredibly close to my heart. I spent my 20s in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, working in the rural areas of high-risk communities to prevent especially children, but young women and men being trafficked and sold to sex slavery, sex industry. And it defined who I am. And everything that I have done since then, in one way or another, I found an opportunity to make sure we address the root causes and not get lost in the noise of these symptoms that might one get a lot more attention to. I am joined by two distinguished scholars, public intellectuals, and leaders and thought leaders who spent decades of their life working on anti-trafficking causes. I'm going to let them quickly introduce themselves. Maybe Karen, as our local Houstonian, we could start with you. Please briefly introduce yourself, and then we will move on to Lori.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. My name is Karen Kennard. I'm the Assistant Executive Director at the Children's Advocacy Center in Harris County called the Children's Assessment Center. I have worked at the Children's Assessment Center for 25 years, initially in training. Prior to that, I worked for the state doing child sexual abuse investigations in Harris County for 6.5 years. So it's with great pleasure. I am now the Assistant Executive Director at the Children's Assessment Center here in Houston, responsible for Harris County.
Thank you, Karen, and kudos to your noble work. And my dear friend and colleague, all the way from New York, Lori Cohen.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori Cohen. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Protect All Children from Trafficking, PACT. We were the first organization in the United States founded to raise awareness about the harms of child sex trafficking and exploitation. We were founded over 35 years ago and actually focusing on the region that Abdullah had done his work in his early days in Southeast Asia. What happened over time was we recognized that this is absolutely a crisis, but no one was speaking about the crisis of child sex trafficking in the United States. And so we began to really shift our view to what was happening here, because one of the things we'll be talking about, it's much easier in some cases to look abroad, look away, look in other communities than really look at what's happening in our homes. We do remain very connected internationally. We are part of a network known as ECPAT International. We're active in over 100 countries around the world with a shared mission to end child sex trafficking and exploitation. And I am delighted to be here. As Abdullah knows, I'm an enormous fan of the Rothko Chapel and just thrilled to be collaborating on this absolutely essential issue, and really grateful to the work that the CAC is doing to help keep children safe locally.
Absolutely. And for Rothko Chapel to provide its platform to such important intersection is as a distinct honor, and it's the real fulfillment of our mission. So I'm grateful. One could sort of blame us or label us as joy killers. If they are not convinced to the why are we doing this to begin with? When the whole world, whole Houston, American, Mexican, and Canadian cities are just full of joy, celebration for this event, why to even talk about trafficking when this is all about celebration, sports, and music? I wonder if initially, as the first question, if I could invite both of you to uh, re-articulate what's the case for bringing this thorny, difficult, and somewhat gloomy topic in the midst of joys and celebrations.
I'll take that one. First, I want to make sure everyone, our listeners, understand the Children's Assessment Center's role here in Houston as well as Harris County. The Children's Assessment Center is the advocacy center for Harris County, meaning we address child sexual abuse, and that is children between the ages of 0 and 17. The Advocacy Center movement has been around since 1985. We started in 91, and we've been a county department since 1995. Our responsibility is the multidisciplinary team approach when it comes to child sexual abuse investigations, service delivery, and the legal process here in Harris County. So, the Children's Assessment Center receive children between the ages of 0 and 17 through our partners with law enforcement or Children's Protective Services. Once a report of child sexual abuse, which includes child sexual exploitation, they are brought to the Children's Assessment Center, which is a multidisciplinary team approach to child sexual abuse investigations. The first thing that has to happen when that child is brought by our investigative partners is the forensic interview. The Advocacy Center has professionals that conduct forensic interviews with children to make sure in an open-ended manner that they can get the information from the child about what happened. After that, they meet with our family advocates that support the family, as well as the medical clinic is here on site in one location, so they can do the sexual assault examination. For ongoing care, we have mental health professionals that work with the children, their siblings, as well as the family to provide mental health support for our children who are experiencing sexual abuse or sexual exploitation. We also have a wonderful department that addresses the needs of the children when they go to court on these cases. So we have Children's Court Services, and we have a Children's Services Department that supports them also. But remembering also, we are responsible for in Texas, there are 60 advocacy centers, and we are one of those. And we are also responsible for education and prevention. So we have an education department that reaches out to schools responsible for educating adults, as well as children and professionals to prevent child sexual abuse. We also have outreach in podcasts, our Protect, Heal, and Prevent podcast that is constantly trying to educate and raise awareness of child sexual abuse. The World Cup is a wonderful opportunity. I am a Houstonian, and I'm very happy that it's here. But we also have the responsibility to raise awareness and educate our community on what to look out for, our reporting laws. So it's very important in such a city of this size. Houston is very large, and more people are coming into this community. Child sexual exploitation happens all the time in Houston, but now we are more than doubling our population. So we want to make sure our population is ready to do the things if they run into problems, human trafficking during this event. They know how to report, how to respond, and what to do in these situations. So it's very important that we're both here to talk about that and raise awareness and educate our community.
Thank you, Karen. Lori, you are muted.
Sorry,
After 6 years of Zooming.
No, I saw in the comments people said there was an echo, so I tried to mute to reduce the echo, but I hope the viewers have resolved the echo question. Look, trafficking happens 365 days a year. It's not limited to the World Cup, and in doing this work and even in preparing for this webinar, I will tell you that we as an organization have gotten pushback and some defensiveness to say, are you saying the World Cup causes trafficking, the World Cup participation? No, we're not saying that. But when, as Karen mentioned, there is an event that causes a high volume of people coming into the city, there's a lot of displacement, anonymity, unfamiliar people being moved around. And when there is demand, because unfortunately, in large scale events, there is a sense of when people are coming in for entertainment, purchasing sex has somehow become socialized to be part of the entertainment package. And what we have been trying to do is just create a shift in norms. And some of that is through education, and some of that is through law enforcement to say this is not part of entertainment. Um, it's been quite interesting that the World Cup, to the credit of the World Cup organizers, they actually anticipated the risk of trafficking so that every city that was bidding on a World Cup site needed to put in their human rights package. What are they doing to minimize the risk of trafficking? And a shout out to Houston, which put together an extremely robust protocol. PACT was honored to participate in the development of that protocol, and the people running that piece of the development really have tremendous expertise on this issue. So there is an awareness of it, and a sort of a recognition that we all need to really lean into this. And again, this is not only World Cup, but this is the type of large scale event that happens that tends to result in an increase of trafficking and exploitation.
Thank you. Very super helpful. So it's not mutually exclusive. You don't have to lose any of the joy and the pride that your city is hosting this large event. If anything, I will be part of it in many different ways. I hear the pride in your voice, Karen, about Houston. But as both of you, especially Lori, you beautifully articulated, this is an existing problem that these large events create opportunities for bad faith actors to these viruses to fester in a much larger scale, that we have to be vigilant. This is particularly important for Houston because it's one of the highest trafficking problem cities in the world and in the United States. I wonder if I could invite both of you. What makes Houston particularly vulnerable? That forget about the World Cup, but ongoing trafficking incidents are incredibly high, and we are struggling to keep up with it. What are the contributing factors which makes Houston unique in that sense?
What we're seeing as part of the care coordination, part of the Texas Governor's Office addressing child sexual exploitation cases constantly, daily, here in Houston, the size of Houston. Being an advocacy center, we look at all of our large metropolitan cities, and our caseloads are larger. And when you look at your New York's, Chicago's, those Los Angeles's, and Houston, large populations. Houston has the privilege to have major freeways, highways. We have that I-10 corridor that goes from LA to Florida. We have the 69 corridor that goes north to south. We have two major airports here, an international airport and Hobby Airport, which makes transportation through, in, and out very easy. And that's what we're seeing constantly. This is a constant problem that Texas has recognized and is working on constantly. And the CAC is very part to partner with them to address that. So again, Houston being the largest advocacy center is working with our partners in law enforcement to both local as well as federal to address this problem, which is a constant problem here. But we have wonderful partners, our legal partners, law enforcement partners that are working together to try to address this with the care coordination group, our advocacy groups, both local law enforcement, trying to address it in a multidisciplinary fashion, including everyone that's involved so that we can address the needs of our children here in Harris County, as well as protect and provide prevention to try to keep other children from being victimized in this way.
Wonderful.
So I am an attorney by training, and for 14 years, I represented victims of human trafficking. I am based in New York, but it was striking to me that a number of the victims who I represented were from Houston, and that, as Karen mentioned, having interstate travel, having these freeways, it helps facilitate a pipeline to transporting victims around the United States. And I very much saw that between Houston and New York. There also have been some interesting studies done in Texas, specifically looking at youth and youth in the foster care system. And, foster care has been recognized as a condition that might make a child more vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation. And a study was conducted in Texas that looked at children in foster care and found that 25% of children in the foster care system were at a very high rate or very high risk of trafficking and exploitation. And it's important to recognize, I think nationally, when we look at the high numbers in Houston, people jump to this preconception that it's because of immigration, that because Texas shares a border with Mexico, that most of the trafficking coming in is international. And I did work with international victims who came across the southern border, but far and away, like beyond the majority, I would say probably over 90%, and Karen may even know the higher statistic because you're working with children who are being trafficked and exploited. They're US citizens, they're domestic victims, they're from Houston. And it's important when we talk about the definition of trafficking. Trafficking doesn't require movement. Trafficking doesn't require people crossing borders, doesn't require people leaving the state. It doesn't even require people leaving the city. It's really about exploitation and a loss of control. And for children, any child who is put in a position where they need to provide sexual services in exchange for money is by definition a victim of sex trafficking.
That's a very good way to my next question. I'm a new Houstonian. I've been in this city for 8 months, but I feel I am already baptized and indigenous. I love this city. For the most part, it's misunderstood outside of Houston. Its reputation, its reality is better than its reputation. But when I tell people Houston has one of the highest rates of trafficking, you could immediately see this incredible puzzlement, if not defensiveness. I wonder, part of the problem is people don't even recognize it, or they have some sort of a misconceptions what trafficking is. And so therefore they are not seeing it. They go their lives in Houston, but they don't see any manifestation of that. What are some of the most important and key misconceptions, misunderstanding about the trafficking that we can clarify here?
Sure, I'll address that one. One of the biggest myths is that it's stranger related. Many times in our trafficking cases, these children are victimized by someone they know. It's not the stranger danger type situation or the Taken scenario from the movie Taken. These children are groomed over time, and they are manipulated mentally and psychologically by the person who they know. And many times it could be a relative, it could be a family friend, it could be someone who they consider, their boyfriend. There are even different names that are given to people who traffic children. You have the Romeo, with lack of a better word, the Romeo pimp scenario where he gets into a relationship with this child, whether it's a male or a female, and they think they're in a relationship, and then the tides are turned on them to start exploiting them. Or the gorilla pimp, which is the more abusive scenario, that they are controlled by fear in those situations. So, or the CEO, which they call the CEO pimp, which they are groomed or attracted by some type of glamorous job, modeling, entertainment, and they're attracted, and then they are stuck into exploitation. So many times it is not a stranger; it is someone they have developed a relationship with, and then they are turned on to manipulated to stay in this type of business, as well as drugs are introduced, which makes it even harder for them to get out. So we have to raise awareness to our community, and especially at all times to educate people on what to look out for. It's not situations of stranger relationships. It's more being aware of what's going on with your children, with those that they know, as well as the addition or the involvement of social media, and also understanding the role that it plays, which is a very big role when it comes to exploitation. That's how they are contacting them. That's how they are grooming them. That's how they're luring them into this lifestyle. So it's very important that our community is aware and that they are putting things into place to educate our children, to put prevention in place to protect our children, and things that they need to be aware of, again, to report. Texas is a mandatory reporting state. What are they looking for? How do they report? We have to educate our community on that, as well as our children on
Thank you very
boundaries.
much. I saw a study. Whenever there is a child exploitation or pedophilia cases in those communities, anti-immigrant, anti-different sentiments immediately goes up. To your incredible point that people think these strangers, outsiders are coming and doing these kind of heinous crimes, which is absolutely not the case at all. Lori?
No, yeah. And I just thought, Karen gave a really good overview. What I thought I would do is just mention a very specific case, which actually was the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Texas just announced this yesterday. And I thought the timing couldn't be better because it really gives us a good overview of what does trafficking look like in Houston, And what are the barriers to actually recognizing it? So yesterday they announced that a 23-year-old local man named Christian Morris was sentenced for child sex trafficking of minors. And what he did, he recruited teenage girls, and as Karen mentioned, he gave them drugs. So he used drugs as a way to bring them in. And then he posted sexually explicit ads offering them for commercial sex. And then he forced these girls to have sex with clients near the Blade, which is some people call it the Blade, some people call it the Track. It's an area where trafficking takes place in both Houston and in Dallas. So in both cities, but of course both within Texas. So there's no interstate travel, which people always say, don't you need interstate travel? You don't. And there were three victims who testified. So it said that the defendant instructed them how to walk the blade, how much to charge, and he gave them condoms. He kept all the money. The youngest victim was 15 years old,
My
right?
goodness.
So, teenagers, 15-year-olds, absolute control over these local girls, local trafficker. To me, what was really interesting about this is what are the challenges we face and why don't we recognize it? And Karen mentioned the movie Taken. So, this sort of girl from a good family is kidnapped by a stranger and taken overseas. So here it says that the defense attempted to convince the jury that the victims were just a group of runaways and school dropouts engaged in bad behavior, right? And really, the question is, I mean, first of all, victim blaming is not, it's never really a great defense strategy, but under the law, there's no defense actually for trafficking a child. There's no defense for giving a child drugs, forcing a child to engage in commercial sex acts, but it does. So there's the legal piece, and then there's the reality, which is that we have this fantasy of the good victim. And if a child is not going to school, if a child is using drugs for whatever reason, maybe they're self-medicating, maybe they're numbing themselves, maybe there's a history of family addiction, whatever the reason is, blame is preventing us, and judging these children is preventing us from really identifying them as who they are, which they're victims. Fortunately, in this case, the jury did not buy this really awful defense, and they, after 2 days, convicted him, and he's gone away for a long time. So thank you to the good people in the Southern District of Texas who saw through this defense. We can't victim blame. It's just not helpful. The other thing I want to add is that in this case, these were girls. One thing we see at PACT, and something we were known for as an organization early on, is that boys can be trafficked. And Abdullah, you mentioned your work in Southeast Asia, that boys were also at risk. And it's a real challenge because boys are not seen as victims. They're not recognized. So we're not identifying them. And then when they try to get help, I have worked with boys who said that before my organization had assisted them, they were turned away because there were only services for girls. So we need to do better for all our children, but we need to recognize that boys can be exploited as well.
Lori, I'm so glad you mentioned that case. I saw it on the news. And also, he was talking about misconceptions. A lot of time when we're looking at child sexual exploitation, especially, for example, the 15-year-old that was in that case, and we see victims 12 and 13, which I think is like the average age. A lot of people have the misconception that, oh, they consented. Minors in Texas cannot consent. So it's very important for our community to understand that they cannot consent to sexual exploitation. It is abuse, it is sexual abuse, it is illegal. So I want to dispel that myth that any sex act conducted by a child is illegal. And I want to make sure that we're clear on that.
100%. And I will say, we're going to talk about this. Texas sometimes takes pride in doing things a little differently from the rest of the country. But in this case, Minors, there's no consent for minors in Texas. Actually, there's no consent for minors anywhere in the world. So this is something, our work, and the reason we're part of this global network is we were looking at something that at the time was called child sex tourism, where US citizens were going abroad to pay for sex with children. And we worked very hard to get Congress to pass a law actually criminalizing that kind of activity, because really what was happening was US citizens were raping children overseas and somehow justifying it. And we see that there are US citizens who tell us, oh, well, the age of consent in whatever country is lower. But in fact, you're not allowed to buy a child for sex anywhere in the world. And thankfully that includes Texas.
Incredibly helpful and eye-opening, dispelling some of the myths and misconceptions. Another area is for those, what I was working on, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, was in Thailand, when one area, one city like Houston becomes somewhat safer to these kind of evil acts. It is not that city's problem. That means all these horrible people doing horrible things to our children, and it attracts, it sort of invites these kind of problems to these cities and regions. So it's a much broader problem, much greater problem that we need to have some sort of a national and also wholesome attitude towards. Then what are the warning signs? What are the important ethical, moral, also strategic, tactical alertness that we can invite people to be paying attention to for business owners, for residents? And I'm going to ask this question in two parts. And in terms of these warning signs, how are they different when there is not major event like World Cup or big concerts or big exhibitions are happening? And during normal times that people should pay attention to? And what are the additional warning signs and flags that we should look for events like FIFA and others?
I think when we're looking at warning signs, whether it's FIFA or everyday, just a normal day in Houston, the signs are going to be the same when you're looking at trafficking victims. Things that you may pick up on physically, maybe things like tattoos or money sign tattoos or some type of labeling on them. Children who may not respond unless they have the okay by a person that they might be with. Children that are alone at night, unaccompanied, without a good explanation. Children who run away a lot, at-risk youth, children who are involved in state custody, LGBTQ youth. They are vulnerable victims for this type of trafficking and that need for someone to look after them. So those are children that might be at risk. So educating our children as well as ourselves on what to look out for is very important. Children who are nervous, again, the drug use, running away habits, children that are really needing help. If they're alone and running away, they have to survive. So they are a prime victim for someone who wants to exploit them. But I want to point out that a lot of these children are communicated online, cell phones. That's how they are getting their attention and recruiting them, as well as advertising them and communicating with them. So it's so important that parents or caregivers are monitoring their children's cellular devices, that their computers, making sure that they have, monitoring devices on those phones and computers. We give the world access to our children when we give them cell phones and computers and even gaming devices. We have to monitor those. But most importantly, we've got to educate our children and continue to communicate with them on what they can look out for, or that they have a safe adult. If they can't come to a parent or caregiver, who else can they come to? They have to have people that they can go to, because in many situations, these children may send a picture and then they're going to be blackmailed. So we want to make sure that our children have someone to talk to, but we need to educate them on the what ifs. or this could happen, instead of letting the world blackmail them based upon lack of knowledge. So again, our youth are at risk because of their age and lack of knowledge. So it's up to us to teach them proper boundaries, things to look out for. And also, it's our responsibility to monitor their social media sites as well as their internet actions to keep them safe.
Thank you. Lori?
Karen gave a very comprehensive list. What PACT has done, a huge part of our work is education as part of prevention. And we have a very broad range of resources looking at what are the signs of human trafficking. And we created something in advance of the World Cup called Know the Red Flags. And I'm just going to read these. You can also download this checklist from our website. But some of the things that we look at, the child seems scared, disoriented, or lost. They may not be able to identify where they are or how long they're staying there. So that means they're being brought in from another location, and that's something we see. That traffickers, this is a crime of economic opportunity. Traffickers see an opportunity to make a profit off a child's body, and so they're bringing children into the community for this event. An older person is constantly monitoring the child's movements and speaks for them. The child's responses seem scripted. If somebody knows this child, we see sudden or dramatic changes in behavior or in attire, right? They start wearing very expensive clothes that they couldn't afford to have, or jewelry or bags. Any signs of untreated injuries, exhaustion, malnutrition, and not dressed in what we call weather appropriate attire. So, we see this frequently in very cold environments where the child is barely dressed. And, I know it's going to be pretty hot during these World Cup games. So, but really, is it weather appropriate? Is it age appropriate? How is this child dressed? So, I do urge people to download this red flags checklist and really know that if they see something concerning, we do want to make available information about how to report this. And I think Abdullah will be getting to that next.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we will be able to send a link as well as the website of both organizations and others here to all the participants. We are coming near to an end of our conversation, and I think that's the appropriate way to end. What are some of the key moral cause and call for action that you would like to leave the audience with? What are some of the, and I will ask in two ways again, on the preventative ways and also in the, once these people are trafficked, how to respond, how to rehabilitate, how to save them. In both fronts, what are some of the main action items that you might, or wisdom that you would like to leave us with?
I'll answer. I want the community to understand that it is all our responsibility to protect children. It's not just caregivers or law enforcement. It is very important that we, if we see something, say something, that we keep our eyes and ears open. Example, in the Woodlands, there was a citizen that reported to law enforcement that they saw traffic going in and out of this one house, very nice neighborhood, as well as young girls going in and out. That was a concerned citizen that called law enforcement. And again, it was a child sex trafficking ring. So it's all of our responsibility. If we see something, say something. Know the reporting laws. Texas is a mandatory reporting state. If you have cause to believe that any child is abused, that you must report to your local law enforcement or Children's Protective Services. And I think we're going to share some reporting numbers with you. Educating ourselves on what to look for, as well as our children. Our children are depending on us to educate them, because if it doesn't happen to them, it might be happening to a friend. So if a friend comes to them, what should they do? And they're not going to know what to do unless we educate them on that. So we must know the reporting laws. and again, understand that this can happen to any child. It's not just poor children, it can happen to any socioeconomic group, any race. So it's not just limited to a certain population. Yes, we do have to keep our eyes open for our at-risk youth that are maybe in state custody, your runaways, your abused children, children who have experienced abuse. But as we mentioned earlier, it could happen to any child. They're offering them things, and also, telling them that they're beautiful, or the things that they haven't heard. It's up to us to make sure that our children feel appreciated and give them positive self-esteem, so that a stranger doesn't have to do that.
Incredibly
So,
helpful. Yes.
yeah, thank you. So I will add, because I know we're close to the end. I'm just going to add a little bit, and then I saw there was a question in the Q&A that hopefully I can answer. So in our work, I had the privilege of being on a national advisory committee looking at trafficking and transportation. Houston was highlighted as a major hub. One of my partners was head of security for Houston airports, and Houston Airports is doing extraordinary work. So I want to give a shout out to the people of Houston who are doing this work, and United Against Human Trafficking, which is a multi-participatory group. Many stakeholders are working to address this issue. The city of Houston, there is a national human trafficking hotline. The number, if you see trafficking, you can call this hotline. It's 888-373-7888. You can also call. The city of Houston has created their own hotline number within the Houston Police Department, which is 713-308-8600. And I cannot stress, in the research we found, what we saw is it wasn't always that people didn't recognize it was trafficking, but they felt worried about negative consequences if they report. And in doing this research, I had the opportunity to speak with a corporation that has mandated reporting in their business model. And their message to their employees was, don't worry about, like, don't think about what if I get it wrong. We want you to think about what if I get it right, right? What if I get it right? You have the chance to save a life. And I think that's a really critical message. Just do it. Just make the report. And there are experts. You don't have to break up the trafficking ring. You don't have to conduct the rescue. You don't have to intervene. And in fact, we say don't intervene because it's not safe. You might put the child at risk, or you might put, even if it's an adult, whoever it is, you might put them at risk and yourself at risk. So let people who are experts do this work. Just pick up the phone and make the call. And I'm going to stop. Abdullah, you can let us know if we have time to answer this one question, or else I can take it offline after the
Let's
webinar.
try to engage with people's specific questions. We only have 1 minute left. And then try to bring these resources. Haley, I hope you can share those numbers in the chat room as well. In addition, what I would ask is, please hold your leadership and yourselves and your communities, whatever collective you are part of, accountable and responsible to see if the anti-child trafficking or anti-trafficking is a sensitive item, that in their leadership, faith leadership, civic leadership, political leadership, whether these people, when they seek your vote of trust and confidence, they are presenting this as one of their priorities in combating, preventing as much as possible. If it isn't, it tells, because this is such a prevalent problem, but it's evilishly invisible. It's evilishly, you have to go one extra mile, and there's a role for leadership and everybody to play to make it visible. You have to just unveil the evil and make this visible, because once it's become visible, it's not too difficult to make a case for it. It's not too difficult to mobilize resources for it. It's just, unfortunately, its trick is it gets itself invisible. Therefore, much of the action and reaction is not there. Um, I hope these conversations and more, and our support to these wonderful organizations will get us where we need to go. Are there any ending wisdom that you would like to leave, Karen or Lori? If not, I'm going to invite everybody to join me in thanking you from the bottom of our hearts for all the noble work that you all are doing.
Thank you, Abdullah. Lori, I think we have time if you would like to quickly address the question in the chat, and I can read it so everyone is aware. So Alexandria was asking if you could elaborate on sudden or dramatic behavioral shifts as a warning sign. And specifically, what would that look like for a bystander who wants to be proactive, but they may not know the children's typical baseline behavior?
So I think it's a good question. If you don't know the child's baseline behavior, then it's hard to see a change in behavior. That question is that identifier is really if you know the child. So if there's a neighbor, a friend, a teacher, teachers often are extraordinary observers and a main source of reporting changes in behavior. So that in a school setting, for example, it would be if the child stops attending class. So truancy is a major indicator of a potential risk of trafficking. If the child falls asleep during the day, and normally the child is alert during the day, if you see, I mentioned a change in clothing styles, maybe the child starts to wear heavier makeup. I mentioned carrying designer bags that traffickers often, we talk about guerrilla pimps, but it's not always this brutal force. It's really giving children things that they want, that they love, that they think will make them feel special. And traffickers feed into that. It's a very, it seems like a lavish gift to a child, but it's a very low cost investment in getting that child's loyalty. So a child stops engaging with their normal friend group and starts saying they have different friends. They say they don't, their friends are too immature. They don't want to be around them. They want to be with more mature people. So, and then unexplained hours coming and going without any kind of explanation about where are they going, why are they coming in at unusual hours. So, these are all the types of things that should really create concern. But again, Alexandra's question is that type of behavioral change really is through people who have had an opportunity to observe the child. The other thing I just wanted to add, and Karen, you're welcome to address the question, is I just want to put in information for people. In addition to the tip guide, we've created a really robust package of information overall about best practices during major sporting events. And Houston, as throughout the state of Texas, mandates that hotels train their staff on the signs of trafficking and put up posters. And we created in advance of the World Cup, and Haley, I don't know if you have time to put it on the screen, just a guide and a consolidated guide, not only for Houston and Dallas, but for all the locations in the United States that are hosting World Cup events. What are the rules for the hotel industry? And that is downloadable, available on our website. And we provide free online training for the hospitality industry, and you can access all of that information on our website. With that, I will stop, Karen. It's up to you.
Okay. And trust is something that has been destroyed for a lot of our victims. So as a bystander, if you have some concerns, that person may not come to you right away with what's going on, but they need to know that they can trust you. And remember, that's been destroyed for them. So when we talk about that trusted adult, just letting them know you don't have enough, you don't feel you have enough to report, but just letting them know that you are there for them. And if they know that you are there and you mean what you say, then maybe they will reach out to you for help in a later time. But that trust is something that they don't have. And if you're trying to provide that, it's hard for them to believe it. So it may take a little time for them to come to you as a bystander, wanting to help them also. And also the those you that are local, the Children's Assessment Center is here for you, as well as with prevention and trainings. We have a training center, so feel free to reach out to the Children's Assessment Center. You will receive the information from us also. We have trainings that are going on at all times, and you can go to our website, and a lot of them are free to you. So please join us in raising awareness and helping to protect our children here in Harris County.
I would say
Thank you,
just
Karen.
amen. And from the bottom of my heart, I think I speak for everybody. And on behalf of Rothko Chapel, thank you. The world continues to spin because of people like you. I hope you will find every resource, every strength to help these most vulnerable populations in their very dire situation as much as possible. And I hope everybody will be a partner in this noble effort with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Abdullah. And just noting, McCall, we saw your question and we can follow up with you offline about your question in the chat, but we are at time. So this does conclude today's webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to follow up as well. Thank you.